just wanted to say that, after Roe v. Wade was overturned, there was a huge upswing of vasectomy acceptance in the United States. And there was certainly, as we saw earlier, a huge, it was on Google. It was a search that men were making. Numbers were going up. We've not talked about abortion as an issue, but I was looking for a different way, a new voice, an original idea. And Renee Johansson, Dr. Johansson, who is with us right now, was the sort of got me started on an idea for a special guest today, but I'm going to let Renee do the introduction.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Anyway, I got wind of this book that came out very recently and immediately had to buy it. Oh, it's going to be backwards, I realize. It's called Ejaculate Responsibly, A Whole New Way to Think About Abortion, and it's by Gabrielle Blair. I don't know who has gotten their hands on this book yet, but it's, while there might be some technical things we might disagree about, she is a kindred spirit to us because she has decided to bring the importance of men's involvement in causing unwanted pregnancy to light. And recently this book was #2 on the New York Times bestseller list for nonfiction. And I'd like Gabrielle, is she coming on with us?
I'm here.
Yep.
Oh, I don't see you. Anyway, Gabrielle, welcome. Thank you for joining us. As I mentioned, you are a kindred spirit. We have been waging this, I wouldn't call it a battle, but trying to promote education and information about vasectomy, which is a way to ejaculate responsibly. We have promoted and trained and educated and advocated for male involvement, but your book helps us with that fight by giving us a bigger audience and another advocate. I just wanted to say the mission of World Vasectomy Day as a group is rising up and out of love for ourselves, our family, and our future. And I thought you could promote your book better than I can, but I probably bought no less than 30 of these books so that I can hand them out mostly to my colleagues, so they can promote this concept.
Well, that's amazing to hear. Thank you for doing that, and thank you for having me here. I do feel like a kindred spirit. I am such a big fan of vasectomies. I feel like I talk about them all the time, promote them to everyone, and have also just experienced the benefits in my own life. After we were done having kids, we have 6 kids, my husband and I, he had a vasectomy, and what a wonderful, I know you've referenced it as a gift, and I do feel like it was a gift to not have to burden myself with the yearly doctor's appointments and maintenance of birth control and dealing with the side effects that I had done for so many years. And what a huge benefit for me to not have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah, one of the reasons World Vasectomy Day exists is because there are actually barriers to men getting a vasectomy in the United States. I'm doing a presentation at the Society of Family Planning event coming up recently, and my portion is to talk about how few residents get any training in vasectomy. Even in urology, there's a huge portion of urologists who don't feel comfortable with the procedure in the office. Only 10% of family planning residents get any training. OBGYNs get no training. I think an OBGYN should be trained. We're surgeons. We're certainly capable. I think Charles Monteith and I in the United States might be the only 2 OBGYNs that actually provide vasectomies. So I'd like you to also talk about how you came up with the idea and promoted the idea that men cause 100% of unwanted pregnancies, because that is a big pill to swallow in a culture that pretty much has ignored men's roles in unwanted pregnancies all along.
Right. It is a big pill to swallow, especially it's just the opposite of kind of what we've done. Currently in our culture, as you know, women are expected to do all the work of pregnancy prevention and are essentially entirely blamed for any unwanted pregnancies. So I'm switching that conversation and suggesting like maybe we should be thinking about this in the opposite way and consider men's fertility and men's role in this. And after thinking it through, and I'll talk about that more, I could see clearly that men were causing unwanted pregnancies. And when I put that statement out there, a lot of people were really bothered by it. Mostly men. I didn't get a lot of pushback from women, but men that were bothered by this idea and said, insisted to me that like, no, this needs to be a 50-50 effort. And I mean, my response was 50-50. That sounds amazing. I would love that. That sounds delightful. We're nowhere close to that. I mean, not even at all. And even when you're looking at tubal ligations and vasectomies, which are often compared, and tubal ligations are far more dangerous or risky than vasectomies based on my research. I hope as doctors you would agree, but there's still far more tubal ligations being performed in the US than vasectomies. And that should be for sure opposite. But anyway, so I was like, yes, I would love 50-50. We're not there yet. And I want to point out that you don't seem to be stressed out by the actual reality that all of this has been on women. You're only stressed out that I've suggested maybe it should be on men. So anyway, I like to point that out to them. But basically what happened was where I came through with this thinking is I was looking at abortion numbers and they were higher than I thought. I don't know. I never looked them up before, so I don't know what number was in my head, but they were just higher than I thought. And especially because I talk with women for my work, for as a living, I hear from thousands of women each month, and I know how careful women are with our bodies. And basically any doctor visit, any gynecological visit, we have to kind of psych up for it. It's going to be invasive. You never quite know what's going to happen. We've got cold metal tools on our most sensitive parts. Like it's not the most pleasant thing, right? And the idea that women would be casually going in to get a gynecological procedure just made no sense to me. Like that, no one's casual about that. Like it's like stressful even to get a pap smear. And so then I was like, well, what's happening there? Why wouldn't more women be on birth control? And I instantly knew why. And it's because I have tried every form of birth control. And as a mother of 6, it might seem like I wouldn't know anything about birth control, but I actually have tried all of them and had great success with them. I got to choose when I had my babies, which was exactly how it should be. You should be able to get to choose that. Anyway, but I dealt with horrible side effects with every kind I tried. And beyond the side effects, here I had all these young children, and the maintenance was really overwhelming, just trying to keep prescriptions up, getting to the doctor, troubleshooting if the side effects were an issue, having to go back to the doctor or return for a shot or return for an IUD insertion. Like there was just so much maintenance and or taking a daily pill. It was just a lot. And anyway, so I instantly knew like, well, I know why women aren't always on birth control. Like it's difficult. Like it's difficult to take for a lot of women. It's expensive. There's just a lot of barriers there. And anyway, so then I started thinking about, well, what about men's role in this? And started thinking about condoms and vasectomies, which are the two I was most familiar with. And it was so clear to me that they were like the opposite of women's options. Like when I think of condoms, they're accessible all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You don't need a prescription. You don't need a doctor. There's lots of different materials. It's easy to troubleshoot them. You don't need to ingest anything every day. You can just use them, right when you're going to have sex, and that's it. Anyway, it was just it was total accessibility, total ease of use compared to women's birth control. And then I was thinking of vasectomies as well, going, this is just, I knew how great it was in my own life. And I started talking to men about it, and it was so clear that there was just a really false stigma and a lot of myths around vasectomies in our culture. Mm-hmm. and condoms as well, but specifically with vasectomies, where they were just very much like, the men I was talking to were very clear that they were afraid their erections were going to change, their orgasm was going to change, their sexual experience was going to change, and they did not want to risk that. And it was also clear if they talked with anyone who had had a vasectomy or was an expert, like a doctor, that they could easily get those fears resolved. And it just wasn't happening. Like, these conversations just weren't happening from what I could tell. And it's obviously a private thing. It's not like men are out there bragging about their vasectomies, but maybe they should be. Like, it's such a beneficial thing for individuals and for the community, for the society in a whole. Like, I wish there was a clinic on every corner.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, a couple of notes from your book, and of course we all know this, but you were able to put it in a book that people actually read on a wide scale basis, where we don't. We try, but we haven't gotten there. Is that women really are only fertile for 24 hours a month. We cannot control when our egg is released, but men are fertile every single day. They can't control when their sperm is ejaculated. And so we really have spent a lot of time working on contraceptions for women and not men. Again, part of that is because we have more to lose if we get pregnant. And certainly when you're developing a medication or a therapy to use as a contraception, you have to weigh the risks and benefits. And so benefits of contraception for women always outweigh the risks, because we could die in childbirth. For men, that bar is very low. If they get a headache, they stop doing trials for contraception. But really, it should be the collective. It should be the risks and benefits that arise for both people. You had mentioned in the book, one of my favorite quotes in the book was, when children are young and they have a cold, we tell them to cover their nose and their mouth because they can hurt somebody else with their virus. But we don't ask men to do that with their semen, even though they can really, really hurt somebody with an unwanted pregnancy, whether that pregnancy was terminated or not. My favorite quote from the book. But I don't know if we have 133 people here. I don't know if anybody has any questions for Gabrielle. Again, I feel so, I'm thrilled that you wrote this book. I have some real ammunition. Mostly, I think us providers of vasectomies could talk very technically and we just lose our audience. And this book helps bring it to the forefront. And I'm just so happy you wrote it. I know this is not your design mom. You're a blogger, right? And so I'm curious of why you decided to write this book. This is completely outside of what you normally do.
Well, it's true. My first book was in 2015. It's called Design Mom, How to Live with Kids. And it's very much that, how to have children and enjoy living with them and enjoy parenting. And the second book I write is about basically how to not have any kids. So I definitely switched gears in there. The reality is I have been writing online since 2006. And sorry, we're in the French countryside and there's some flies. Anyway, but I really did focus on the intersection of design and parenting, but I quickly found as I started writing all those years ago that I could kind of fit any topic I wanted under at that intersection. And I ended up writing about all sorts of things, and current events were always on my mind. And especially as a parent, what we talked about at the dinner table was often what was happening in their world, in the news, what was happening, what the kids were talking about at school. And social media definitely changed things. So, the kids, what they were seeing on TikTok, I was seeing the same headlines on Twitter, and so we could talk about this all together. And because of that, I've ended up writing about, I write about gun control. I've written about, certainly when there are politicians that I won't support, I'm writing about that. And then I also tackled abortion, which I don't think I've never really set out that like this was going to be my topic. I would write a book about this. But But I do feel really compelled to amplify women's voices and share women's stories, and advocate. This kind of advocacy, I think, helps do that.
And
I
we
had
thank
a
you.
question, Gabrielle. This
Yeah.
is Jonathan. My question is, early in the very beginning of the book, one of your first caveats is you're not going to talk about your opinion about abortion. And I was curious about why you chose to start the book by not talking about abortion.
Right. And I wasn't trying to be sketchy there. It's easy to find my opinions about abortion if you want to do a very cursory look. But basically what I was asking people to do is, well, I've been debating about abortion for decades really, as the whole country has. And so many of these debates are really philosophical or religious. They're talking about, when do we think life begins? When does a fetus become a baby? These are these debates that we're not going to agree on. We know we're not going to agree on because we've seen this for decades. So I wanted people to set aside their beliefs and set aside my own beliefs, like, hey, I don't need to know what you believe right now about abortion. You don't need to know what I believe, because I'm going to talk about this in an entirely different way. We're going to talk about prevention. And what I have found, I've been, putting these ideas out in the world for 4 years and really debating them almost daily online for 4 years. And what I found was the shift to prevention is such a positive shift. It takes all the emotion about the abortion debate, all the emotion about a potential baby, and removes it because we didn't ever create the baby. We never created the baby. We never caused the pregnancy. So you can all of a sudden start really discussing things without all the emotion. And it was also this hugely positive thing because we know how to prevent pregnancy. It's not like a mysterious thing. We understand how it works. And we have had programs that have had huge success. I'm thinking of the program in Colorado, which wasn't that many years ago, where they offered free and easily accessible birth control. And they saw a huge drop. It was almost 50%. I need to go look at my own book to remember the exact stat, but saw a huge drop in unwanted pregnancies. And that program didn't even go that long. How much more success could they have seen had it been even more, widely administered for a longer period of time? And had vasectomies been included in that, what would we have seen differently there? So this isn't magic. We know how to do this. And it's just so much easier to discuss prevention versus trying to convince women whether, they should have an abortion or not, which it's like, we're way too late by the time we've gotten there. Let's talk about how to prevent this in the first place. What if women didn't have to make that decision because she never got pregnant because the man ejaculated responsibly? So that's why I ask people to set their stuff aside. For those who are curious and don't want to Google, I'm pro-choice. And I'm also a practicing Mormon, which is unusual for Mormons to be pro-choice, but there are more of us than you think. And so I also wanted to ask people to sort of I introduced myself at the beginning of the book as a religious mother of 6. And I also wanted people to set aside their assumptions. I knew by mentioning that I was religious and a mother of 6, they would assume I was anti-abortion. That's always the assumption. And so I also wanted them to set that assumption aside. And just to start from a place of, let's talk about this practically and how we can avoid causing unwanted pregnancies. And that's why I ask people to set aside their thoughts.
Your book is kind of, it sort of sets out in 28 short chapters or different length chapters, 28 reasons why men should be held 100% responsible. Could you just what is your 3 favorite or 1 favorite chapter?
Well, I've got the book here in front of me. Let me think if there's one that's interesting to me and I think it relates to vasectomies and tubal ligations, where I talk about that we really don't mind as a society if women suffer, as long as it makes things easier for men. And I know that can be hard for people to hear, but I think it's true. And I think when you think about the idea that far more women in America are getting tubal ligations than men getting vasectomies, it's a really clear example of that. Vasectomies are a far easier procedure, a far less risky procedure, and they should just be, the doctors were clear that I talked to for that chapter in the book. Just, no hesitation. If there is if a couple is considering a vasectomy or a tubal ligation, they should always choose a vasectomy. It's always the better, safer choice. And we like that seems to be very clear for the medical community, but as a society, we don't really talk about that. And we just assume women will do this one more. They've already gone through pregnancy. They've already gone through childbirth. Now they're going to do this additional difficult procedure just so that men don't have to worry about it. And what a bizarre thing. What, you know, and even just, I try and explain this in the book, and I don't know how clearly I do it, but the idea that even just this, there's this idea that men don't want to use even a condom during sex. They don't want to have to be bothered with that. They just don't want to do the work of pregnancy prevention. And when you break that down, it's not because they think they will hate sex with a condom. It just won't be quite as pleasurable. Like, so if it's a scale of 1 to 10 and a 10 is sex without a condom and that's the ultimate pleasure, they're like, well, it'll be like a 7 or 8. So it's not like it hurts. It just maybe doesn't feel as good. And you think about that and go, so you're willing to risk a few minutes of slightly less pleasure. You're willing to risk your partner's, you know, her job, her social status, her relationships, her life. People die in childbirth every day. Like, you're willing to risk that for a few minutes of slightly more pleasure. And of course, if you like look at it that way, men are like, oh no, of course I don't want to do that. Like, obviously, no, I do not want to take that risk. But we haven't taught them that. We haven't taught them to think about it like that. We haven't taught women to think about it that way either. So you'll, I have noticed this book will, you know, shift the perspectives of men, but also of women. I mean, here I was, my youngest was 9 years old when I started writing these ideas. My husband had had a vasectomy 9 years before, and I still had never thought of this stuff. Like, I just never really thought that I could expect of my partner to do the work of pregnancy prevention, and should have expected that from the beginning of our marriage, that we should have shared these efforts and not just assumed I would do it all, which is the assumption I made and the assumption my partner made. Like, we just assumed it. And that's the whole culture assumes that. That's not me and my husband are not unusual in that.
Is there anybody else who has any questions?
Well, I wanted to say, I think, Gabrielle, you and Jonathan are the true kindred spirits. Neither of you are medical providers, but you bring this information in the best way you can to promote this concept of not just male responsibility, but male autonomy also. You know, there are a lot of barriers for men, by the way, to get vasectomies. We try to break through those. But it's an uphill battle trying to get people interested in providing more vasectomies and training in vasectomies, and why. But I do think, Jonathan, you with World Vasectomy Day and all of your advocacy and promotion and really will to the importance of this, and Gabrielle, you too, and it's amazing that both of you are not medical providers, but quickly picked up on just how important this is, how vitally important this is. And I thank both of you for taking the lead and helping us get the word out there and understanding the importance, and just so we can get the rest of the culture to see that and act on it.
Go ahead. Sorry, are we out of time? Sorry.
Come on. No. No, finish. I'm sorry. I had a question or another thought.
I'm just was remembering what was just mentioned before my session, that the requests for vasectomy has risen since Roe was overturned, and I hope that will be a big instigator in getting more physicians interested in learning this procedure. If they know that there are clients, customers, patients, whatever we like to call them, that want this procedure, I would hope that increases things. It's interesting in different countries. It's so different. In France, where I'm living right now, you go to the doctor for a vasectomy and you have to wait 40 days until you can get the procedure. You basically have to get a consultation and wait 40 days. And it's a big deterrent. It's a huge deterrent. And I think it's really harmful. But then I'll talk to my friends in Australia, and they're like, oh no, it really is like a clinic on every corner. It's just like apparently super, super accessible there. So I think it's achievable, and I think we can get there. And I think creating a demand for this, which is often how our I mean, our medical system is still part of our capitalist society. So creating a demand for procedure can increase the actual procedures happening. Could be great.
When I told people about the book, the one thing people responded to was, wait a sec, men are 100% responsible. And I thought you did a really good job of explaining. So could you just succinctly, what's your answer? Because it made sense to me when I read the book, but I haven't been as good as repeating it.
Right. Well, I mean, I explained it in a few different ways, and some different ways, sort of connect with different people, but I will talk about this. And this has already been mentioned, but women are fertile for 24 hours a month, and we don't get to control when that is. We don't get to control when we ovulate. Even if we have a very precise period every 4 weeks, the research is clear that ovulation can still happen in a pretty wide window of 10 days within that regular cycle. So we can't control it. We can't really even predict it very well. Like, it's just not anything we can do. And then you've got men who are fertile from puberty until death, every single day, every hour of the day. So think of like a woman taking the pill, and the pill is still like one of the most very, common forms of birth control. So a woman taking the pill every day, she's taking that every day, not for her fertility. She's taking that to manage her partner's fertility. So because it's the sperm that's causing the pregnancy. Most of the time she has sex, almost every time she has sex, she can't get pregnant. It's just physically impossible. Her egg's just not fertile. She can't get pregnant. Every time he has sex, every single time he has sex, he can potentially impregnate his partner. He is always fertile. And he always gets to choose in the same way that, or in the opposite way of women can't control our ovulation at all. We have no control over it. Men always get to choose whether they ejaculate sperm or not. That is their choice. And because of that, like if you walk through that logically, you're going to go, oh, got it. And I want to say one other part, and that is the idea that if women say, yes, I want to have sex, then it's on her. And I want to go, well, no matter what she says yes to, even if she begs you to have sex without a condom, it does not force you as a man to choose to ejaculate irresponsibly. You get to choose. So even if she was out of her mind for whatever reason, was demanding sex without a condom, it doesn't force you to have sex without a condom. You can still have sex with a condom. You always get to choose whether or not you ejaculate responsibly. And for that reason, I think it's really clear that men cause these unwanted pregnancies. There was an example just the other day from a reader who said her husband is a doctor and she wants to have a second baby. They have one baby and he doesn't. And he prevents the pregnancy by not having sex irresponsibly, by not ejaculating irresponsibly. And he knows she wants the baby. He knows he gets to control that, because men can choose to not ejaculate irresponsibly and then they don't cause unwanted pregnancies. It's pretty simple.
There you go.
There you go.
Anybody have any questions? Because we've taken up Gabriel's time. We've got a big schedule, still some things left to do. Doug, I know you must be there still. You've been very quiet.
No, a very fresh perspective. I enjoyed it a great deal. It gave us all a nice something to present to our patients.
Good. Well, I tried to make it small and inexpensive and fast to read. And I hope that it's widely read and shared, and, leave a copy in your waiting room and hopefully people will pick it up and share it with others.
Well, if they're in our waiting room, hopefully they've been snipped by then.
Right, you're right. And if it helps, I have I Heart Vasectomy t-shirts and I Heart Vasectomy bumper stickers and all sorts of things if you need things for your patients.
Well, we really appreciate it. Well, thank you so much, Gabriel.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Have a great day and congrats on this great organization.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
Oh, so everybody, where do you get the book actually before you leave?
It's available anywhere books are sold. Ask any bookstore to either order it for you if they don't have it in stock, or you can always find it on Amazon.
Mhm.
Cool. Well, thanks for that. I read it too. I recommend it.
Thank you.
All right. Take care,
Bye-bye.
Gabriel.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you, Renee, as well for that.